Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to our panelists today. We're going to be focusing on STEM. And hello, everyone. Again, if you were in my last session, I'm back here again for the panelists. My name is Kim Lin. I am a college success advisor here at Fulfillment Fund. And we have three lovely panelists today. We have Saadiya Desai, who's a software engineer for Snap. We have Silvia Segura, who's a program and outreach associate at Blue Sky LA, Breathe Southern California. And then we have Juan Villanueva, EIT associate mechanical engineer at LADWP. So one of the first things I'd like for us to go around is please go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself and where you work. And before we get started, just as a reminder, students, feel free to participate in the chat. Let us know your thoughts and feelings. And if you have any questions, feel free to put in the Q&A. We will be giving out scholarships as well as gift cards. So your participant is really welcomed and we would love to hear your voice. All right, so let's start off with Juan. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work and what you do?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Juan Villanueva. I'm a mechanical engineer with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. My first 3 years, I've been 10 years with the company. The first 3 years, I was in the power system, working at the power plants, hydroelectric plants, anything that generate electricity for the city of LA. And the last 7 years, I've been with the water system, working throughout the city from Beverly Hills to Boyle Heights, South Los Angeles, all over the area, making sure that when you guys open your tap, there's water flowing to your tap. So briefly, that's essentially what I do. I have a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering from the University of Loyola Marymount University.
Thank you so much for sharing, Juan. Saadiya, can you share a little bit about yourself, where you work and what you do?
Yeah, everyone, my name is Saadiya. I'm a software engineer at Snap. What I work on is I work on this desktop software called Lens Studio. So if you're on Snapchat and you see the lenses or the filters, the creators usually create it on Lens Studio. So I work on that. I've been at the company for almost 2 years now, and I studied computer science at the University of Waterloo, and that's in Canada.
Thank you. And then Silvia, same question. Can you tell a little bit about yourself, what you do and where you work?
Hi, my name is Silvia Segura, and I'm a program and outreach associate at Breathe Southern California. It's a nonprofit that promotes clean air and healthy lungs. I've been at the organization for about 2 years and a half. I've actually hopped around in different fields. So I started off in solid waste and then switched over to water conservation. And then I decided to end up in air pollution. Most of my work is communicating different things to the communities that I work with. And also I plan a lot of environmental events that bring together volunteers, and we build like DIY air purifiers for people who have asthma, or we plant trees or build gardens. So that's kind of the work that I do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for sharing a little bit about yourself and telling us a little bit where you work and what you do. So the second question that I have is, how did you discover your passion, and when did you realize like you wanted to go into this field? So I will start off with Saadiya.
Yeah, for me, I would say that I was always sort of interested in computers, or more specifically, I was interested in video games. When I was in grade 6, so middle school, Microsoft had this conference called DigiGirls. At that time, that conference was to encourage more women in STEM. And I didn't really know what computer science was, and I kind of just wanted to go to a conference. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll go and see what it's about. And at that conference, I got to see a lot of different paths in computer science. And what really interested me was that we had some animators for this show called Handy Manny. It's like this cartoon show that was in Canada. And I saw them all animating Handy Manny on the software called Maya. And, I was never a great artist. I was like, I don't want to be the animator that animates Handy Manny, but I want to be the person that writes the tool, so that writes Maya. So I just kept that in my mind. And so when I went to high school and we were choosing careers, I kind of wanted to be like a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor that works with computers. And then I realized I don't want to be in school for that long. So I kind of just was like, okay, whatever, I'll just go into computer science and see where it takes me. And that was probably one of the best decisions I made.
That you went to a conference and saw the interest and then something came up, right? And we always talk about, going to, different opportunities and really put yourself out there because you'll never know what comes up. Sylvia, so same question. How did you discover your passion and when did you realize you wanted to go into your field? And I know you mentioned a little bit kind of going in different places. So yeah, we'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I actually started off with, I never really met anyone in my field. It kind of just happened when I was 16 years old. I started my first environmental program. I was very passionate about recycling at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to start a recycling program. And then I applied for a grant. And then I was able to get funding to like actually get recycling bins at an elementary school. And it kind of just started like that. But I really, my dad's a jardinero. He worked as a gardener. My family's from Mexico, so we were first generation Mexican American. So we didn't really talk about what we were gonna do as a career. Like it wasn't in the conversation. So it just like I said, I started at 16 with just doing that, and I was like, wow, if I could get paid for this, like that'd be really amazing. But yeah, I still had no guidance. I didn't even know if I was gonna end up in college. And luckily, the stars aligned, and I ended up going to community college. And then I went to UC Berkeley and majored in conservation. And then from there, I got my master's in regenerative studies. So it kind of just, I ended up the path that I was supposed to be on, and I'm still designing environmental programs to this day. And it brings me joy to think like I was this little 16-year-old girl doing it, and now it's like I'm making my 16-year-old self proud. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's like full circle, and sometimes I love that you started at 16 and, now you're doing it, and 16-year-old Sylvia would be so proud of you. Juan, can you tell me a little bit again, how did you discover your passion and, when did you realize, when did that light come up for you when you wanted to be in your field?
Definitely. So I was just a little background. I was born and raised in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles, to two immigrant parents from Michoacan, Mexico, and also first generation. And going through that, it's tough because you don't have, as Silvia mentioned, there's no guidance. There's no one that's done it before you. No one's talking about that in these lower income society, disadvantaged communities. No one's talking about college, at least, especially back in the early 90s, 2000s, right? So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know I was actually at a public high school doing very bad. I was doing very bad my first 2 years. I was at Roosevelt High School, and then I ended up making a decision to transfer to Salesian, which is an all-boys private school. Got a scholarship for playing soccer. I was pretty good at soccer back in high school. So that was the first time I took a good direction towards my path. So at that point, I started looking into, I wanted to do something with my life, but I wanted more guidance. So I started looking into what I was into, and I was into math and physics. That was the only thing I like to do. I don't like to really write or go to English class, any of that. So I spoke to my physics professor, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I was an engineer at LMU, but I wanted to be a teacher because I'm good at teaching. I want to have other students, become engineers. So he's like, come to a career fair next year, an event just like this today, but it was not virtual, it was in person, but equivalent. So I was there, and some of the students, one of the students' parents came in, and he was an aerospace engineer. That's why I have that background there, because it's what I got inspired to be a mechanical engineer. So the guy came in and he started talking about working on satellites, working on rockets. And at the end of the presentation, I told him, hey, this was mid junior year of high school. I still didn't know what I wanted to be. I'm like, hey, what does it take to be an engineer? He's like, you have to be good at physics and math. I'm like, boom, that's it. I'm like, do you make money? He's like, a lot. Short, only 4 years of school, only 4 years of school needed. I'm like, there it is. So I was good at it, at some of the courses for it. And I started looking for mentors and the teachers I would look up to. One of them happens to be an engineer and happens to have graduated from the same school I attended, LMU. So that's where it started. And I know there's other questions that I don't want to be answering ahead of time, but pretty much I started finding the right path, and to get to where I am now, a bunch of internships, a lot of different networking, and finally got the opportunity with LADWP and work for the city that I was born and raised.
Wonderful. Well, Juan, you actually came at a great time because my question was revolving around networking and mentors. So as you all know, today's theme is about building connections and shaping your future. And, we want our scholars to highlight their amazing skills, right? Share their superpowers and stand out and understand that they're not alone in this process. And so I know you mentioned a little bit about networking and finding mentors, but can you kind of tell us a little bit more in detail, what was networking like for you, and if you had any mentors and who they were, and how did they help you along the way?
Definitely. So, so the networking. So one thing I'm gonna recommend everyone from the get-go is to, every summer you have, if you're not behind in classes, if you're already attending school, college, or if you're not, but you're gonna be attending college, make sure that you take advantage of every summer. I'm always on top of my nephews. Say, stop wasting time. Time keeps on moving. And a lot of people would tell me, hey, I'm a 4.0 student. I'm like, I'm doing better than 4.0 students I competed with because I networked, because I did internships. So everyone here listening, the 77 people listening, make sure you do internships. So at the end of my freshman year, first thing I applied to was I got selected to go with Engineers Without Borders to Africa. So there was about 1,000 applicants, a professor, and 3 students got selected. So we went out to Africa and did a water project for WOWs, bringing in water to a community, about 55 visually or blind students that weren't getting any. They would have to walk about 2 miles to get potable water. So that was my first internship. Second, at the end of my sophomore year, I kept networking throughout with all the professors. You want to make sure that you build relationships. Engineers and STEM students were known for not being the best public speakers. At least that was a big common stereotype back in the day. I think we're changing that. I think we're becoming better public speakers as we're moving forward. So definitely, build those relationships. Don't be embarrassed. I would go to office hours and show my professors that I was very passionate about my career. I was very passionate about wanting to succeed. And they saw that I wasn't like I said, I wasn't the 4.0 student. I came out my bachelor's with a 2.9, and then I came out with my master's at a 3.8. So I started off slow, coming from Boyle Heights, which we didn't have, unfortunately, we didn't have the best professors at that time. We only went up to Calculus 1. Some students were coming in with Calculus 3 out of high school. So don't be intimidated. Go in there with a passion and work hard. Be the hardest working person in the room. So at the end of my sophomore year, I had made the relationships. So a professor selected me to apply with me to an internship with the Department of Energy of the United States in Colorado. So I worked at NRAL, one of the national laboratories that studies concentrated solar and solar energy. So that was that. At the end of my junior year, I worked for Toyota. So I was actually a Talaku scholar, which is another great scholarship foundation that's available for minorities, and through them, as I was a Toyota scholar, I was able to apply to that internship. Every summer, I would apply to at least 40 internships, and that's how I would get one. I would get 1 or 2 offers per summer. So people are like, oh, there's nothing out there for me. Apply. You don't have to be qualified. Let them tell you you're not qualified, because you might be the most qualified person that applies. So remember that. And I interned for Toyota, and at the end of my senior year, I interned with the Navy as a civilian with the Department of Defense in Port Hueneme, and they actually offered me a full-time job. But while I was getting my master's, DWP reached out to me, and they gave me a better offer, so that's where I ended up at. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, what a journey, and what you've taken so far, and just taking any opportunity that you see. And nowadays, right, it's more than just your grades. It's really about experience and who you know. So thank you, Juan, for sharing. Saadiya, what about you? Can you talk a little bit about your experience of networking, or if you had any mentors that helped you along the way?
Yeah, most definitely. So I was also a first generation college student, and I came from a very low income family. So when I was choosing my university, the reason I went for the University of Waterloo was because they had a great co-op program. So in other words, an internship program. And so after you graduated, you were required to complete 6 internships by the time you graduated. And the reason I did this was because I was like, oh, you know, it'll help me pay off my living expenses and things like that. But it ended up being the most beneficial thing that I have done for my career. What it actually helped me did was that it helped me figure out what I was worth, how much salary my job, my profession was worth, how to negotiate salaries. It helped me get a full-time career after graduation. So part of this degree, I did 6 different internships where I got to build my skills and really figure out what exactly I wanted to do in computer science. And it was mostly related to like going into kind of like the art field. I wanted to work with artists and help find solutions for them. And so that was really great. One advice that I have, which Juan already reiterated, is in your summers, you should definitely be looking for internships. And you can do this various ways. There are multiple different websites that you can go to figure out like which companies are hiring interns. Your university board should have its own job board that you can look at. You should also, if there is a position that you want, one thing that I liked doing when I was looking for internship was that I would personally find the recruiter on LinkedIn and I would message them why I was a great candidate, or I would try to find the hiring manager and message them why I was a great candidate, or I would try to find a connection that worked at the company. So I went to the University of Waterloo. I would go look for a Waterloo candidate that was at that company, and I would message them like, hey, can you help me get an internship here? And most of the time, they would most likely respond back to you. Another thing that I did throughout those years was network with my peers as well. So because I went to a school where everyone was doing internships, you know, I can get my friend to refer me to the internship while she's doing her internship. And you kind of get this referral network going on as well. And taking advantage of that is really critical. And also what I found is that a lot of people sometimes become buddies with the recruiters for these internships. And so I would be like, hey, like, do you think you can ask your recruiter friend to help get me an interview? And that's something that I leveraged as well, along with my other friends. So there are a lot of opportunities as well. And when you do get into your 4th and 5th internship, one thing that you should definitely think about is where you want to go for your full-time opportunity. So after you graduate, like what company do you want to work on that you see yourself working on, and try to aim for those companies, because a lot of the majority of the graduates from my school, what we ended up doing was that on our last internship, we ended up converting that to a full-time opportunity. And that way you don't really have to worry about looking for that full-time job. I mean, I went through that hassle of looking for a full-time job after I graduated, but you could really avoid all that stress. But guaranteed with that, like with those 4 or 5 internships that you do have after you graduate, you will be in a far better position than most candidates. At the end of my degree, my GPA, we don't really do much GPAs in Canada, but I would say it was like maybe a 2.8. I don't know. Like it was definitely not a 4.0 GPA, but I got better opportunities than people who had 4.0 GPAs or who graduated from Ivy League colleges, because I had a great resume and a great work experience. And I think that's what really matters at the end of the day. And when you're in your internship, you can look for mentors. What I personally did was that I connected with some of the director of engineers or the managers. So what you want to do is when you're an intern, if you're a terrible intern, people will remember you. If you're an amazing like brainiac, people will remember you. But what happens when you're in the middle, right? People will, at the end of the day, people who are in the middle, people will be like, yeah, you're a great engineer, you know how to code, but how do you make yourself memorable? And the way that I did it was pinpoint a point of I wouldn't say contact, but something that I related to with a director of engineer at one of my internships. We just like related to how one of our designers had a computer that made a lot of noise, and we kind of connected with that and bonded over that, or like we connected over hockey and things like that. And so when I reach out to them now, they don't remember like the code that I write. They just remember that I was a good, fun person and that they're more than willing to help me out. And that's kind of like how you kind of have to play the game in some ways.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and all the wonderful tips and finding internships, and, you know, really sign up now, right? Even if it's a summer internship, you can start now and finding them. They're out there. So, so yeah, thank you so much. And then, Silvia, can you talk a little bit about your experience with networking, any tips, you know, of finding internships? I know we kind of mentioned that a little bit, and mentorship.
Yes, so I did a lot of internships myself in different fields within the environment. So I went into water, I was in solid waste. So it was kind of nice to be able to hop around in each of these fields to figure out like exactly what I wanted to do. Because for like 3 years, I was like, I'm gonna be in water. Sorry, Juan. And then it just ended up in doing work with air quality. But as you're figuring it out, you might change your mind within 5 years, and who knows, right? But I feel like over this time and what I've learned through these internships, at the end of the day, like I was able to use all the same skills in my job today. I remember in some of my interviews where I was interviewing for a job, a full-time job, they were like, well, why are you hopping around? Why are you there? And I'm like, hey, it's all connected. The environment, anything that has to do with the environment, it's all connected. And if you tell me it's disconnected, it's not. But I was able to really have a good argument for it. And so then they're like, oh, okay. And so that's where, it gave me a lot of job opportunities and in getting hired. But where was I going with this? Sorry, guys. But I think, yes, having a lot of internship opportunities, interning as many places as you can. There's a lot of paid internships. I think one misconception when I first started applying to internships was like, oh man, do I have to like, you don't get paid or you have to give people coffee? Because that was just the initial thought, right? That they give you like jobs that you're doing that are not valuable to the organization. So definitely when you are looking for internships, make sure when you start interviewing, ask them about their culture, ask them like what your typical day looks like, in case you can stop yourself from moving forward with that organization if they're gonna kind of make you do things that you don't want to do. And I think that's mainly it, because I feel like everybody else shared a lot of information about networking. Oh, I was gonna mention, definitely go to office hours. I went so much to my office hours with different professors, and I got different opportunities from them. And one of them, I was crying and I was like, I can't find a job. And it's like, oh no, don't worry, I'm hiring for this. And it's like, oh, okay. So don't be afraid to talk to your professors at office hours. I know it can be scary sometimes because you're like, wow, what am I going to talk to them about? Like besides whatever the class is going. But honestly, professors, a lot of them have a lot of opportunities that they can help you with. And so don't be afraid.
Yeah, really, don't be afraid. If anyone's stopping you because of different reasons, like still go for it. Believe in yourself and you got this. I know that all of us mentioned that we're first gen, and I want to answer a few of our Q&A questions. And so one of the questions we have is, the student is a first gen as well. Sometimes they feel lost and they don't know what they're doing. Did any of you ever feel that way? And what were some things did you get around that? Especially sometimes where it seems to be standard around certain STEM majors. So would anyone like to answer that question in terms of, feeling lost, and how did you overcome that?
Okay, so I definitely felt lost. I felt lost from the beginning. I didn't even think I was gonna be accepted. Actually, I had a teacher at high school that told me, hey, he went to LMU. There was a lot of teachers from my high school that went to LMU. So one of them was like, hey, you're not gonna go to LMU, not with your GPA, because I had a 3.3 in high school, right? And I'm like, oh well. So I was lost. I wasn't getting support. My dad was telling me, hey, go to work. What are you gonna go to college for? Just go work. But my mom was there pushing me. So there's gonna be family members. There's gonna be friends. There's gonna be people in your life that you're gonna come across that are not gonna motivate you, might not push you in the right direction. But you just have. I mean, it sounds cliche. Instead of just follow your heart. Follow what you're really passionate about. And but what I do recommend, I personally say, look for something that is gonna pay for your bills. I will say that passion with paying your bills. My little quick example, my niece, she loves art. I'm like, hey, look, you can be an artist without getting a degree. You can study to be a good artist, but I told her, why don't you get a degree that's gonna pay your bills? So she became a psychologist, and now she does art on the weekends and after work. So most schedules, you can find a job that, especially now, that telecommutes or that has a flexible schedule, and you have free time to work on your passions. I have my little side passion that I do handmade pottery and stuff. So you'll find time. So now I was lost, and I would just find the right people to talk to. I would find the mentors. I found the teacher that was, hey, I was an engineer. I also came from this neighborhood, and I just did the extra work. At the end of my freshman year, I don't know if anyone's going to relate with me here. I ended up crying at the end of my first semester of LMU. I cried and I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm going to quit being an engineer. I can't do this. I'm going to go do business. I'm going to go do something else, something that doesn't take up every weekend, I was staying up to 2, 3 in the morning. And then she tells me, I already told all my friends that you're going to be an engineer. So I felt kind of pushed, you know, like I can't let people down, you know. But I knew I wanted it. I knew I was being overwhelmed, comparing myself. There was a group of about 100. LMU is a very small school, private school. There was a total of 100 mechanical engineers on day one. We graduated with 27 mechanical engineers. That's it. So I know the others shaking heads. I know you guys you can relate to that. It's very, very tough, but it's worth it. Them careers are worth it. So I cried and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I already started. I'm gonna do it. So I went to the counselor. I went to the dean. I went to all the office hours that others have mentioned. And honestly, you had to sacrifice. And I accepted the fact that, so there was, from the 27, there was a group of 8 to 10 of the students that came from South Korea from a engineering high school. So they were like, they had already taken all these classes, you know, before even being in college. So there's gonna be some people that we're gonna be disadvantaged in comparison to them, but it's your own path. It's your own run. So don't focus on them, see them, and, you know, say, hey, hopefully one day I can give my future generations that opportunity that wasn't given to me, but I possibly give it to someone else if I work hard. So that's when I felt lost. I just remember that I need to work hard. I didn't have that, but I have the passion, I have the drive, and I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna be one of the few out of my community that make it out. So, and I wanted to come back and inspire the rest. So hopefully someone gets inspired.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was very inspiring just sharing your journey and how you got to today. So we really appreciate you sharing that. Another question I'd like to, oh, Saadi, did you have something else you want to mention?
Yeah, I was just gonna add
Yeah.
on to one. I just like everything I 100% agree with, because I was crying at the end of my first year too, and probably for the all 5 years I've attended school. But I do want to say that, you know, you can attend school on your own pace. You don't have to take 5 courses a semester, and you're not dumb if you choose to take 2 or 3 courses a semester. It's honestly way better for you and your mental health if you just go at the pace that you want to go at, and like, you know, you'll learn a lot better too. And just remember, like, you know, like if you have to withdraw from a course, that's not the end of the world, honestly.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Another question I'd like, maybe Silvia, you can answer is, you know, I think as a first gen, and I identify as a first gen as well, is having that pressure from parents to excel in college, but having a hard time struggling having everything, especially in STEM, right? And so how are you able to handle pressures when it comes to being first gen, whether that's in your career, in your life? How is that, and how were you able to overcome them?
There was definitely, especially when I was in Berkeley, it was really difficult. A lot of my classes, I was struggling, but I was trying to make sure I was going to office hours. I was even seeing a therapist at the time because I also moved away from home. And so I was like homesick. There was just a lot of emotions running through me at that point in time. And I think what kept me grounded was actually, and I'm going to say this a million times, office hours. Because when you meet with your professor and you're able to go through the, you know, materials and things that you can share with them what you know, what you don't know, and fill in those gaps. And then they can tell you, hey, you need to learn this concept, you're having issues here. And so that helped me become a lot more confident. I had this professor who I worked with really well, that she allowed me to come every week to office hours, and everybody was like, damn girl, like, but at the same time, you know, I had to do what I had to do. And in order for me to feel more confident, if I had to do that, I will do it. So that's how I was able to pull through. And then I was also having issues with learning as well. So my professor worked with me to have I was part of the disabled students program. So they figured out like, oh, okay, this, you know, because sometimes we would have exams and I was not able to finish them within the 45 minutes I would barely start in the third question. And I'm like, wait, what's going on with me? So I was able to get that help. And yeah, the more I met with them, the more confident I felt. And then by the end of it, I was like, degree, peace out. And then I was like, JK, I want to get my master's. So ended up with a master's.
Yeah, I mean, confidence is a skill. It all takes time, right? It's practicing and you know, and that's why it's so important to have a support system near you, right? We're all about building connections and people there, and they're all, you know, as long as you ask, you know, there's someone out there to help you. Well, thank you so much. So one of the other questions that I want to bring back is, you know, kind of thinking back for students who might be interested already in STEM, what can students do now to help them prepare for your type of career, right? And I know you mentioned all different types. So what would that look like? What kind of advice would you take? Maybe certain classes you recommend or majors that you've taken. What would that look like? Let's start off with Juan.
To get a career as a mechanical engineer for DWP, honestly, it's very general. You just need to, you know, take classes that they offer in college, but really focus on thermodynamics. Definitely, right now, the majority of in general, engineers that the department's hiring, we're hiring like crazy. So you don't have to be in LA. I don't know if you're all over the city or the country, but we are accepting people from everywhere. We're reaching out. There's a big turnaround right now. The majority of our employees are getting close to retirement. So we're about to lose 30 to 40% of our working force. So we're hiring like crazy. Brand new engineers with a bachelor's degree at minimum, and the EIT, which is the engineers in training degree. If you guys can get it now, get it now. I didn't have it because back when I was in school, no one expected mechanical engineers to work for a utility company. Everybody said, oh, you're going to be in aerospace or you're going to be in the auto industry in a private company, right? Well, I ended up in the utility company, which is predominantly civil engineers. But we have everything. We have civils, we have electricals, we have mechanicals, we have computer engineers, software engineers, we have doctors, we have nurses, we got, you know, janitors, we got everything, landscape, everything that gets the city moving forward. So we got architects. So anyone out there with an engineering degree, go get your engineer in training certificate for your state, and which is also known as the FE, Fundamental Engineering Exam. So there is some offers being given by my company that won't accept you without that certificate. Back in the day, they were accepting everyone without it and giving you 2.5 years to pass it. If you didn't pass it, you get fired. So a lot of my colleagues, a few of them got fired from not being able to pass that exam. It's hard to have a full-time job. You start having a family, you start paying your own bills, and then you're like, oh, I need to study 4 or 5 months straight and go take an 8-hour exam. You know, after you left college, it's hard to go and sit down for a long exam again. So I encourage you to do that. Additionally, I recommend, like I said, thermodynamics. It's a big plus because we're hiring mainly in the power system. The water system now, my sector of the company is divided between power, water, and there's joint in the middle, which is like IT, security. You know, they don't really play a big part in the water and the water side, so they're in between. There's a joint system. Either way, thermodynamics, know how the power cycle is, know how the engines, you know, the Braden, the Rankine. I saw some aerospace engineers there, some mechanicals in the comment section. So yeah, definitely know that. Know alternative energy, know about solar, know about wind turbines. My master's was actually in alternative energy, so that was very helpful for me. And then know about water, know about pumps, know about engines, know about motors, the basics. But definitely just know how the power cycles work, and know how the pumps and motors work, and know a little bit about renewable energies, because that's where we're moving forward, trying to be more green, right, Sylvia? And be more environmentally friendly. And yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Wonderful, great advice. How about you, Sylvia?
So I'm gonna go with my degree a little more rather than my job, because my position, I feel like you can hop in really quickly with different types of degrees, but I think with so I majored in regenerative studies. That's where I got my master's degree from. It's kind of similar to sustainability, but it aims to do more than that. Sustainability is kind of like meeting at zero waste, like just the minimum, right? But you want to go above and beyond. So with that degree, I feel like it kind of showed me to be able to communicate science to communities, especially like my tias, my abuelitas. If they don't understand certain concepts, we're able to communicate it. I worked in water for 3 years, so we had to teach the communities about water conservation and why we're doing it. Because I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, why should I be doing this? Why should I care about the environment, or why So a lot of it was understanding the science of it and being able to communicate it with it. So I did take some coursework when I was at UC Berkeley on communicating science to children, communicating science to just generally anybody. So that was one thing I really enjoyed, and I think that's how I'm able to use it in my field. One thing I would like for everybody to think about is taking courses where you're focused on public speaking. Man, when you go and attend presentations elsewhere and they're trying to communicate whatever topic, if the speaker is not a good speaker, you're gonna be kind of snoozing. And so it's important, especially like for me in this field of sustainability, to be able to be a good speaker. So that's another skill to have. Not be nervous, not be afraid, and constantly meeting people all the time. I meet thousands because I do a lot of tablings. We do a lot of volunteer events, and so I'm constantly speaking with people. And so these it's an important skill to have. But anyway, that's where I'm.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And then what about you, Saadiya?
Yeah, so if I was in someone's position right now where I was back in school and I was to look for like how I would advance my career basically. So the first thing I would do is I would find an internship. So how would you find an internship? I haven't done this in 4 years. So back in my school, we had an internal job database, but I know that a lot of schools don't have these job database. So what I would Google is I would Google tech internships GitHub. So a great phenomena has happened over the past couple of years where other students make these lists of internships and they put it on GitHub. So you will find like a huge list of all these internships, and then you can see it for 2024, you can see it for 2023, and then I would just click on those links and see if they're still looking for interns, and then I would apply to every single one of them. The next thing I would do is that there is a site called Elite Code, LEETCODE. And that's where you practice the questions that someone might ask you in a software engineering interview. And this has just become standard practice. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. So get good at that because it will be stuck with you for the rest of your career until you come to a point where you can say, I made it and I don't really need to do any of these interviews. But when you're starting out, get good at that. If you're not good at that, just practice really hard. They don't really teach you much, like they'll give you the skeleton code, the skeleton to like, get better at this during school. But I don't really think that there is a big focus on this in school, and there kind of shouldn't be because it's kind of just regurgitating all these problems. The reason why internships are important, you might be like, oh, like, I'm paying so much for the school degree. The school degree should help me get this job. False. The school degree doesn't help you provide you with the skill set of what a software engineer needs in a day-to-day life. And I see this a lot because at Snap, we have this Snap Up intern program. The Snap Up intern program is catered towards people who graduated with their degrees, but they never did an internship. And I can compare these interns to interns that have done multiple different internships, and you can really see the difference. You see the difference in terms of code quality. You see the difference in just terms of how they ramp up. The reason why internships are so useful as a software engineer is because you get to learn the tools that every company uses. You get to become expert in those tools by the time you graduate. You also get to learn about how to write documents, like design documents or technical documents, and how to deal with ambiguities. And so by the time you graduate with all this experience, you've already set yourself far ahead of other candidates who don't have that internship experience. And now why that is important. So specifically for me, because I came from such a low income family, I wanted to make a lot of money after I graduated. I didn't know when I was doing my degree because I was just like, whatever, I'll just go into computer science. I'll make like $50,000, $60,000 a year. And then I went and I did computer science. And in my first internship, I was already making more money than my dad. And I was like, whoa. And then by the time I went into my fifth and sixth internship, that like escalated. I was making like 5 times more than my dad. And then I realized how much money you can actually make in this field. And I was like, this is crazy. And so when you do have those internship experiences, when you graduate, you can make, you technically, like, your salaries are very different than the people who don't have internship experiences, who don't have that work experiences, and you can get multiple different offers. So by the time you finish your 4-year program, you can have like different offers and you can have negotiation power. And so that's something that a lot of my peers did. We got multiple different offers and we were able to negotiate a higher salary, maybe even a higher position at the companies that we wanted to work for. Because at the end of the day, you need to play the game, you need to know your worth. And I feel like a lot of companies sometimes take advantage of people who don't know the game and who don't know their worth. And you can research this yourself. You can go to like levels.fyi, which is the site for software engineering salaries. So you can see, hey, like I got an offer from Amazon for like, this level 1 engineer. How much are people making for that role? And then compare what they offer you to this role. And then you can ask for something higher. It never hurts to ask. They're not going to reject your offer. Like they're not going to be like, oh, this person asked for more money. That's so ew of them or whatever. Like I'm going to reject my offer. That doesn't really happen, like with these big companies, they know how to fight back. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think the big thing that has really come out is just internships. Like they're just such a vital, important role, and one being able to experience it hands-on and see if it's, something that fits well for you. I know we are coming close to our time, and so one last question in about like 30 seconds, if you can answer, is any last advice, any words of wisdom for our students? And I know, Juan, you raised your hand, so I'll let you go ahead and go first, but in about 30 seconds or so, any last minute advice or words of wisdom for our students before we end our panel today?
So I saw some comments on the question on chat saying if it's too late to do internships. So I want to relieve some stress and some nerves or some that might be ending their college degree soon or already ended it. It's not, you're not gonna ruin, or your life's not done if you have no internships. You have to know how to sell your story. Okay, so put your story together, prepare for your interview. If you have an interview coming in for a full-time career and you have no internships, okay, fine. It might be true. It might be slightly modified, your story, but remember, you need this job. So I'm not saying to lie. I'm saying to learn how to share your story. Learn how to share your story. That's all I'm gonna say. But you might have to have work to pay for your own school. I had to work while I was doing internships, but I was able to fix my schedule. But some other people can't. Some family needs help. This or that. There's a bunch of reasons why you can't. But now, know your company you're gonna go interview for. Know their story. Know the awards they've gotten. Like I remember interviewing certain companies. I'm like, hey, congratulations on the award for about 2008 for being the most environmentally friendly company. Blah blah blah. Know the story of them. Know what you're going into. Try to find questions from that interview. No matter what. Keep knocking on doors. Reach out to. Try to get my info from the panel. You can share my work email with some people if they're interested. Ask me questions. You can go on Google. Everyone publishes now everything. So go on Google and find out what people are being asked, and be confident. Be confident. Be confident. Be confident. If you didn't have internships, too bad. Now you got you. You're prepared, and you're gonna get that. You're gonna get that job. Don't stress about it. I guess the biggest thing I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. I think you touched on some really good points. And at the end of the day, be confident in yourself, know your worth. In about like 30 seconds or so, Silvia, do you have any just advice for our students?
Yes. So we've been so focused on internships, but there's also part-time jobs too, where it might be less hours or whatever, but it can get you moving forward while you're still looking for a full-time job. So don't stop yourself. And there's a lot of opportunities there, because sometimes some part-time jobs become a full-time job based off of whether or not you're working well with some of the organizations. I know in my organization, we had somebody who joined us as part-time, and she was so good. I was constantly telling our manager, like, this person, we need to put her on full-time. And the more this person was doing, the more work and the better that they were doing, our manager ended up saying, hey, you know what, let's put them on full-time. So they did. So just saying.
Yes, part-time jobs are just as important as any other job. And then Saadiya, to end it off, but last but not least, any advice for our students?
Yeah, I think I'll give advice to students who, are going for their first internship or their first job experience, so you have nothing on your resume. I would say don't aim for those for software developer roles. At this point in the economy right now, with the market being kind of down, don't aim for those big companies. Try to find a small company. There are many, many smaller companies that are hiring that pay equally well, that will give you the great internship experience, and try to be that first person that applies, or that fifth person that applies. All these companies, there's so many of them in the US. You just need to Google a lot. You need to search on LinkedIn a lot, commit that time to it, and just submit your application. And someone will respond back, and people, you will hear back. You just have to put in the effort, and don't get discouraged if your friends are finding all these opportunities and you aren't getting any opportunities. It just takes more time. But once you get that first little hook in, it'll be a lot easier for your next hooks, and you won't have to go through that much effort again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Saadiya. Thank you, Silvia. Thank you, Juan, so much for your time this evening, and sharing just your story and your journey and all the wonderful experience and advice that you have. Students, panelists, if you want to drop down your email or your LinkedIn for Students Connect or have any follow-up questions, we had so many great questions but limited amount of time, so feel free to drop it down. And then students, thank you so much. There will be a short survey that will pop up after we end our session. But yeah, feel free to drop it down, panelists, and thank you so much, students. We really appreciate you all, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your night. See you all to the next session as well. Thank you. Yes, I think they should all be similar for the surveys. Bye, everyone. Thank you.